Hey everyone, Grayson the Bard here, and welcome back to Roster Rundown, the show where I go through Monster Hunter Wilds map by map and talk about the original monsters that call it home. Talking about the good, the bad, and everything in between, all nice and compact in a mostly coherent ramble. Last week we took a look at the Scarlet Forest, which only had 2 original monsters in it, and so today we are going to keep that train a-rolling by talking about the Iceshard Cliffs, which also only has 2 original monsters in it. I will admit this is a little bit of a downside for me. I wish both those maps had maybe one more new wild-specific monster in it. Maybe take away... I'm not a big fan of Balahara. Maybe get rid of Balahara from the desert, and maybe one of the Guardian monsters, and have that spot be taken up by a new creature for both of those. But, you know, game development is hard. I imagine they probably had a lot of stuff planned that had to, get cut. Them's the breaks. And of course, the lack of monsters can be forgiven if those monsters are of exceptional quality. So are the monsters in the cliffs of exceptional quality? Let's find out as we take a look at the incredible monsters of the Iceshard Cliffs. Starting with Hirabami. Hirabami's not a great start. I like the monster, I don't love the monster. I think it has a lot of things going for it, but it also has a couple big things that kind of hold it back in my eyes. I'm going to start with what I really like about it, and that is its design. If you have been around the channel for any length of time, you know I love the color purple. Purple is my absolute favorite color, so seeing this big, gross purple sky eel centipede looking thing flying around in the caves, I loved it. I will admit I was a little bit disappointed when I first saw it playing through, because I saw the shape of its head as it fell down just in silhouette from the ceiling in the cutscene, and I had a moment where I was like, oh, that's Giganox. Giganox is back. And then my hopes and dreams were crushed, and when I saw the centipede tail come down as well. I really want to see Giganox again. I miss the battle nun armor and the coffin hunting horn. Give me that back, Capcom. Please. But Hirabami, in terms of design, is such a good encapsulation of... I think this is what they were trying to do with the roster of creatures as you see them in the story of Monster Hunter Wilds, is that progression from, just very big animals, stuff like the Dashaguma, the Chemitress, Lalabarina, Congalala, all of those monsters that you fight very early on being very primal, just big animal, and then the eventual shift to more alien sci-fi looking creatures. You've got stuff like Hirabami, you have the Guardians, which are actual constructs who I will talk about in their own video. And then especially some of the monsters in the Oil Well Basin, who I'm going to talk about next week, it's a very clear, Hirabami is, I think, the start of that, well, not the start of that tipping point, because you fight Rompopolo before it, but Hirabami is a good, this is where things start to, really lean into the weird direction, and I love that. The way that it flies, and you can see how it effectively uses its head as a parachute to keep itself aloft and levitating, I think that is a really neat design, and a way to, have a monster that can fly, without needing to have wings, and have that, serpentine, just, sky eel-looking design. I personally love it. The mix of, lamprey and bug-like features as well is super cool. It is incredibly gross, in a very fun way. I really like the big bug monsters in Monster Hunter, and even though, Hirabami is not a bug, it has enough bug-like features to scratch that itch for me, and I would love to see Capcom continue to, push what they can do with some of their design inspirations, because I think they are really hitting the nail on the head with a lot of the visual designs in Wilds. Now, getting into what I'm not the biggest fan of is its fight. I think in general it's just kinda simple. Simple? Thinking back on pretty much every other monster in Monster Hunter Wilds, I can think of a couple moves that it does that really stand out, and I can think of a lot of personality that the monsters show. You know, Dashaguma being a big giant brute that is unrelenting. The move that it does where it digs its face into the ground and charges at you. Chatacabra, even with its tongue licking the ground, swiping it at you. lunging at you with its big fist, like in the air, like poised for that big, like this is signaling you to do an offset attack fist slam. Chemitris with its tail and the full 360 it does, lighting the area around it on fire. I am having a hard time. I did this fight, at time of recording, I did this fight just a couple hours ago, and I'm having a hard time remembering a lot of what Hirabami does, aside from like spitting the ice at you, and sometimes doing like a dive bomb, but for the most part, it is just sort of there and present, and it is hitting you with attacks. It's like, it's lunging at you, it's hitting you with its tail, it's sweeping down on you from the sky, but its fight doesn't really stand out to me. This is especially true once you get it away from its herd, and it just kind of becomes no threat at all. I really think Hirabami was a victim of the, like, I think... I don't have anything to prove this. I haven't seen any interviews or anything that have, like, corroborated this story. I feel like they wanted to do more with the herds. I feel like they really wanted the herds to be constantly present throughout the fight, and they wanted them to be more than what they are. But to me personally, I think the herd mechanic just kind of falls flat. They don't really do enough with it. It shows up mostly in the story, and then you just kind of ignore it for the rest of the game. And even then, like, I mentioned this when I talked about Doshagama, I felt like its herd moment in the story was not relatively well reflected in gameplay, because you fight the Alpha Doshaguma on its own, and you don't really have to worry about the rest of the Doshagama showing up again. Hirabami is kind of the same way, although I think in the story, Hirabami does a much better job of having its herd, having the flock of Hirabami, be more of a present threat in the story fight when you do that. I remember that was the one where I had to constantly be dung-potting away other Hirabami in the fight. It, I think, made the best use of the herd mechanic. But I still think because of that, the fight itself doesn't really do a whole lot, because they are banking on there being a lot of them coming at you at once, and so they didn't want the fight to be too overwhelming, which I get and I understand. But then once you get Hirabami by himself, the fight just becomes a cakewalk and trivial, and it is way too easy to get Hirabami by itself. I almost wish they would have made Hirabami immune to dung pods. I wish there had to be a different way to separate Hirabami from the pack than just firing off a giant dung pod. And then, I guess, to finish off my very niche Spyro reference, and Hirabami is just ugly.
Ugly? That does it!
I think probably the best thing that Hirabami does, though, going full compliment sandwich here, I love Hirabami as an introduction to the new Ice Blight mechanic. I really like how Ice Blight in Monster Hunter Wilds physically freezes you to the ground. When I first fought Blanganga, it was, honestly, because I didn't really get hit by Hirabami all that much when I fought him in the story. But when I got to Blanganga for the first time and got frozen to the ground, that's when I realized that it wasn't just a Jindahad mechanic that, this is just what ice does in Wilds. And I like that so much better than just being Water Blight, but reversed, or how in Rise they had it messing with your recharge rate of your wire bugs. I like that it is something new entirely, and I hope this is the version of Ice Blight that they stick with. So yeah, Hirabami is, I think, a good monster, but it is definitely... it has a lot of potential that I don't think it fully reaches. I feel like Hirabami is kind of like not quite touching on like even the halfway point. I'm going to put Hirabami as like a 3 out of 10 monster for me specifically. I really like the design. I really like how it introduces you to like the new Ice Blight mechanic in a fun way. But the fight is just way too simple, and it is it could have done a lot more, and I wish it did a lot more. The same, however, cannot be said for what is, I think, probably my favorite fight, and one of my favorite monsters in the entire game, Jindahad. I have almost nothing bad to say about Jindahad. There is only one thing that I really don't like about him, and that is more of an issue with how much time I spend in this game and how much I fight him because I like him so much, than it is an issue with the actual monster itself. Jindahad, let's start with design. Design-wise, big, landlocked Leviathan. colossal, one of the biggest Leviathans we have seen in the series, with this like bronze metal skeletal looking frame, big like metallic elk antlers. This thing, again, talking about the shift from just big animal to alien creatures, Jindahad looks out of this world in the best possible way. I love how as you break those carapace skeletal rib plates across his body, you get to see more of the flesh creature underneath. The flesh creature? Oh, that did not feel good coming out of my mouth. But you get to see more of Jindahad coming through. You get to see what its skin looks like, and it's just this leathery pitch black hide. It's honestly kind of boring in a way, and I feel like without the carapace and the rib plates, the thing would look so much worse. Who'd have thunk without half of its design it wouldn't look as good? Crazy. But I feel like Jindahad is a really cool example of what a very strong, physically imposing Leviathan can look like, because most Leviathan monsters really lean into the elegant dancer-like movements, stuff like Mizutsune, Royal Ludroth, even Almadron. They all move very fluidly, very elegantly, whereas Jindahad, he lumbers. Him and Ufduna both are good examples of weighty, heavy Leviathans, and I want to see more of those. We all know, again, if you are not new to the channel, you know I love a chonky monster. Give me a monster with meat on its bones. Give me that heft. Every move Jindahad makes feels weighty and powerful, and it almost feels like it does not belong in the Iceshard Cliffs with how you would have to move very deliberately and very carefully in order to get through, until you see it freezing itself. It releases ice from its hands and from its legs to freeze itself to the cliffs themselves in order to actually move across them. And that is such a cool design, and I love how it makes it feel like the monster fits in this kind of cramped, tight environment, even though logically it should not be able to do much of anything in the map itself, which is why I think it's cool that they gave it its own dedicated arena in order to fight in. And the reason I think that is especially cool is because it opens the door for that to happen in other maps. A big complaint that I had with Monster Hunter World, and to a lesser extent Monster Hunter Rise, is the fact that they really can't include huge colossal monsters, because a lot of the maps feature a lot of tight corridors, they feature a lot of low ceilings, things that monsters aren't, big monsters aren't going to be able to get through. So as much as I would love to see the sand whales again, I cannot imagine Jen Moran or Doren Moran swimming around just that little dune area in the in the Windward Plains. But if they included a separate fight zone for the sand whales in the just off map Dune Sea kind of area, well then 100% toe to tip that could work. I could easily see Gagmazios having its own arena in the Oil Well Basin, or something like a Cantor, or I guess those are the two big fire ones. But there's a opportunity there for Capcom to include these big colossal monsters in these arenas and have them just off map as their own separate thing. And I really hope, I know they're doing something very similar with Zoshia when they bring it back for the for Title Update 1. I would love to see each map have a monster like that has its own separate instance battle area just for it, that shows up as a raid boss. But speaking of raid boss, now we're going to get into the thing I don't particularly like about Jindahad all that much, and that is the fact that its fight feels a little bit too scripted for me. And this may be just because I really like fighting Jindahad. I want to make all of its weapons. I want to get the full sets of armor. I really like everything about its equipment and design. But every stage of the fight, you know exactly how it's going to go. You can predict it. You can anticipate what's going to happen. You hit it a couple times in its first phase. He goes to phase 2. You grab the Hirabami. You get the Hirabami to go over to Jindahad. They mess with it for a little bit. He leaves, goes to Area 3, goes up on the pillar before doing anything else. You bring the pillar down, do a big chunk of damage to him, he does his Nova, or potentially you skip the Nova if you're doing enough damage. He goes down to the last area. That's where he does pretty much the greatest hits. He will fight you for a little bit, then go up on the pillar, then do the Nova. The fight always feels the same, and it's an incredibly fun fight. It's an incredibly engaging fight, and even though I know what's going to happen, it's still, like, I enjoy it every time. I just wish it were a little more unpredictable. I wish it didn't go exactly the same every time. And I know they're probably going to do, like, an Arch-Tempered Jindahad, because it seems like the Arch-Tempered monsters this time around are going to be the Apex monsters. So I would love to see them, like, throw us for a loop when it comes to Jindahad. Give us a little more, like, variety to the fight. Because aside from that, he is a 10 out of 10 monster for me. But I feel like I have fought him so much that I am never really surprised by anything he throws at me. Although, one thing that did surprise me, I actually, when I was recording footage for this fight, I was recording with a friend, and we had to record this twice. The first time because I could not get footage of his Nova. We went the entire hunt without Jindahad Nova-ing even once, which I wasn't aware you could do. I didn't know it was skippable, and I don't know if it is, like, a damage thing, or if we just flinched him and staggered him at the right time, or what, but he went right from Phase 1 to Phase 2 to Phase 3 to Phase 4 without doing his big supernova move, and that simultaneously felt really good and really frustrating, because I was trying to get the glamour shot, Jindahad. I need that footage, man. So we had to do the fight again in order to get the Nova, which again, I am not complaining because I absolutely love the fight. It was just kind of funny that the one time I was recording it was the one time we skipped all of his Nova phases. Absolutely wild. Absolutely Monster Hunter wild. All this to say that I think Jindahad is a incredibly solid monster. It is a like 9.5 out of 10 with just the very scripted nature of the fight knocking it down that 0.5 of a point. And I cannot wait to see what they do with it for the Arch-Tempered fight. I was talking to a friend, the one I was recording footage with, and I realized I think it would be cool if more of his attacks released that big ice burst like he does with his ice beams. Because right now that's the main way that ice happens against Jindahad, is with his big breath attacks. I want to see him release it more from his tail with when he walks. I want there to be ice explosions around his hands. I think that would be cool. I think that would be a good way to make the fight more engaging. You would have to dodge a lot more. You couldn't just stick behind his left arm and be pretty much safe the entire time. It would add a lot more variety to the fight, so I hope that's what they do for Arch-Tempered. But we'll see. And that's where I'm going to wrap up this video today. I like the monsters of the Iceshard Cliffs. I love Jindahad. I think Hirabami is fine. I think the Iceshard Cliffs is probably, in terms of monster variety, my least favorite of the maps. I like how at the end of the game Gormagala is there. I like how there are frenzied monsters. I love Nursilla, and I was so happy to see it back, and it also introduced us to everyone's favorite Wudwud. But in terms of original monster designs, it just kind of feels lacking compared to the other maps. Lalabarina and Ufduna do a lot of heavy lifting in the Scarlet Forest, even though it has the same problem of not having as many original monsters. Next week, we're going to talk about the Oil Well Basin, and that is, I think, my favorite just clump of original creatures. And then we have the Guardians, which are their whole thing in and of themselves. The Iceshard Cliffs just kind of falls by the wayside to me in terms of monster fights and variety and design. I would love to see them add more returning monsters into this map to kind of flesh it out and make it feel more interesting. I think Zamtrios could fit really well here if, there was a watery zone. I get why they don't have him. He doesn't really fit if there's nothing for him to swim in. I don't know. I don't know what they could add. Maybe Glacial Agnactor. If they put Glacial Agnactor in here, I would be a happy man. Or maybe even Tidal Narjarala. I don't know. Either way, thank you all so much for watching. Please tell me what you think about these monsters. I love to talk with people in the comments about what they think about these monsters. If you agree, disagree, whatever, let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Don't if you don't. And until next time, I'll see you next time.